Hi, this is Cheryl McQueen, designer with Bello's Designs. Today's tutorial is a fun project with Noof peeking over a brick wall to spy on the Easter Bunny. I hope you have fun with this tutorial. Let's start out by taking a look at the supplies that I'll be using today. We will start out with a multifarious Smooth and Supreme cardstock. This is cut to 6 1/4 inches by 4 1/4 inches. For the frame around the outside, I have just taken a piece of white cardstock and cut this to be 6 1/2 inches by 4 1/2 inches. And then for the card base, I took a piece of cardstock, cut it to be 10 inches by 7 inches, and then just took that piece and folded it in half. For our stamps today, we will be using 3 stamps. We'll be using the Lavinia Lupin. This is LAV 774. We'll be using Lavinia's Noof. Noof is LAV 725. And I'll be using the Lavender, which is LAV 093, or you can use any of the other Lavinia grasses or flowers that you might have on hand. For our inks today, we will be using 3 of the VersaFine Clair. We have the Monarch, the Oasis, the Green Oasis, and the Nocturne for our basic stamping. We will be using for our colors some Distress inks. Today I'm going to be using Lost Shadow. This one is Chipped Sapphire, Broken China, Tea-Dye, Vintage Photo, Walnut Staine, Fired Brick, and Black Soot. Also, to create our nice little brick wall back here, I have got my Sweet Poppy stencil. This is the metal stencil that is called Brick Wall, and the number for that one is SP6131, and it's just called Brick Wall. An optional thing is to use a magnetic sheet because the metal stencils here will stick to them and help your paper to not slide around. That is optional, and of course if you have a pacemaker you don't want to use a magnet. We will also be using the Lavinia masking sheets. I love using these, and I will show you how we do the cutout for our little Lupin rabbit for the project here. All right, and I do have a stamping platform that I like to use. This makes it just a little bit easier to restamp something if you don't get the perfect image. We'll also, of course, be using some blending brushes. I also have a couple of daubers on hand. I'll be using some art markers for doing a little bit of our coloring. I also will either use a fine tip pen or a color pencil. This one is black. This is just for a little bit of definition. If you've got a ruler on hand, that would probably be helpful for you as well. And then I will be using just a little bit of water and a paintbrush for doing my colors on Noof and the rabbit. And then finally, when we put our card together, I've just opted to use an adhesive running tape. You're welcome to use a glue that's used for paperwork, whichever one you like to do. I just like to use this one because it's quick and easy, especially for the demonstrations that we'll be doing today. All right, so let's get started working on our project. All right, to start out with our project, we are going to go ahead and pull out our art card piece. And the first thing that we're going to want to do is stamp our Lupin. So I'm going to grab my stamping platform, set some of this stuff aside so that we don't knock it off. All right, and so I'm going to place my card onto my platform, and as you can probably see here, I have a sticky grid that I like to use instead of the magnets. The magnets always feel like they're in my way. we will take our Lupin stamp, and I'll tell you a little hint that I used. This is the large 8.5 by 11-ish approximate size of the acrylic board. I've started sticking my stamps down to this because I always seem to knock them off the table or get them stuck on something or whatever while I'm working with them. So this way I can always find them. All right, so this pen actually has a little bit of a mark on it, but I think that will be okay. Looks like it's about where my Lupin's going to be, so it will be fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place Lupin way down at the bottom of my cardstock. Scoot him over just a little bit. So he's going to be all the way down at the bottom. And then I'm going to ink him up with the VersaFine Clear Nocturne. I'm going to do that kind of off camera so you don't have to watch me to keep turning in the stamping platform around and around. So we will take that and stamp him down. I like to hold it for a moment or two. This gives the ink a chance to kind of absorb into the paper. And then let's take a look and see if we have a nice solid image there. Oh yeah, that's a really nice image. All right, and so now what we're going to do is we want to use our Lavinia masking sheet. Let me set my ink over here so we don't stick an elbow in it. So if you've never used a Lavinia masking sheet, the way that these are made is they have a paper on one side and a plastic backing on the other side. So what I do is I stamp the image onto the paper side of the masking sheet and then take a pair of scissors and cut out the image that I want to then place over what I have stamped. So what I did was, as you saw how I stamped, I cut out an image of Lupin, placed it on top of him, which I'll show you here in just a second, and then that way I can do my stenciling over the top and it won't affect him as far as the brick pattern being on the rabbit. Alright, so let's see. I had cut out an image before, and so I don't want you to have to sit here and watch me cut that out. So we will grab that little rabbit and I'll continue and show you exactly how we do this process. So this is the one that I used on the sample. So what I did was I stamped him, as I said before, onto this piece of paper, the paper side of our little image here, and I cut him out with scissors. I did not worry about leaving the hairs or any of those little extra things because that's not going to matter. So when you cut him out, don't worry about cutting around the hairs. Just cut straight through them and cut them off. Then I just cut a little slice here, went in and cut out the center part. All right. So now I will peel this off of the clear backing. I don't know if you can see that real well, but there's a little clear backing that it's on. I'm going to take him off of that. And the nice thing about the masking sheet is that you can use it several times. So now I'm just going to lay my masking sheet cutout image over the top of my rabbit. Okay, so now he is all masked out and we can go ahead and start working on putting our brick over him and then it won't show up. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my ruler and a black pencil and I'm going to draw my wall. Let me show you kind of here what I've got. So I have the little concrete topping to my brick wall here, and all I did was just take a ruler and draw out approximately where I want that wall to be. So let's just draw a light little line here. We'll draw a light little line for the edge. And then just a little bit bigger piece for the actual ledge part. Okay, so hopefully you can see that where I have drawn that on there. Let's go ahead and remove this from our stamping platform for right now. We will come back to the stamping platform. All right, so now what I want to do is put my stencil down and start working on that, but I don't want my bricks to get any higher. I don't want them to get into my little concrete part on the very top of the wall. So I take a low tack tape. You can do the Sweet Poppy low tack tape or a low tack painter's tape, or you can use some of the masking sheet material. And what we're going to do, and I think what I'll do first, because I'd like to go ahead and stamp this, tape this down a little bit, give it just a little bit more of a sturdy edge. So I'm going to place this on the magnetic sheet if you decide to use one of those, and then I'm just going to lay this right across that line, that lower line that I drew. And then I'm just going to tape that down. So what that's going to allow me to do is have plenty of room to do my stenciling without having to worry about it going to the top part. All right, so let's go ahead and start working on getting our stencil work done here. Let me scoot that just a little bit so you can kind of see the whole thing. All right, so we're going to lay our little, actually, I take that back. I want to go ahead and do the background. Let's take our tea dye stamp, ink pad, and we're going to kind of put down what would be the mortar color. This does not have to be real dark, nor does it need to be a real solid look. We just basically want to get some ink down to represent that mortar in the background. Okay, so now that we've got that basic down, then what we can do is go ahead and take our brick stencil and just line it up. Just take one of those top little edges and line it up with the bottom of that piece of tape. So now that we've got that down, you can see that it covers up the rabbit with our masking sheet, and here I think you curled up just a little. There we go. And as we do our stenciling, we don't have to worry about messing him up. So what we're going to start out with is our fired brick. And we will get our blending brush and just start blending over this. Now, what I do is I just dab and do. I don't worry about it being solid at all, because as you know, when you look at bricks, most of the time they're multicolored. So just dab and go. Don't worry about making it solid, because you want it to have that realistic brick look. Okay, so you can see we've got some lights and then some darks, and that just really helps with our brick look. Now I want to go ahead and add just a few touches of a darker ink, so I'm going to take the Walnut Staine. And I'm basically just going to take that Walnut Staine and just dash it in places around the brick, just to give some spots of darkness. I'm not doing it everywhere, just enough to give it a little bit of interest, and again, to make it look a little bit more realistic. This just gives nice variation so your bricks don't end up looking terribly flat. Okay, so just a few little dark dashes there. All right, and so basically what we've got is the basics of the bricks down, so we can go ahead and remove the stencil. And we can remove it from the magnet sheet. And then you can go ahead and leave your piece of tape on there for right now. And what we're going to go back and do now is just add a little bit of the color pencil around the edges of the brick. What this does is this just gives a little bit of depth, makes the bricks not look quite so flat, I guess is probably more the word I'm looking for here. So just draw around them, just in random places. Don't just draw around the entire brick, just kind of in random places. And then this will give your bricks a little bit more dimension. Now before we take off our mask on Lupin, we want to go ahead and put him back onto the stamping platform. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our grasses and our flowers and stamp those on. We're going to be using the Green Oasis and the Monarch to go ahead and just put in a few little flowers there. And I'm leaving this on because we want him to be in front of the flowers. All right, so let's get on our little stamp here. And we'll just kind of randomly put in some of those flowers. I'm going to start with the Oasis Green. Alright, so there we've got those stamps in for our Lupin to kind of be behind on the wall. So now I'm ready to go ahead and remove the little Lupin mask. And as I said before, you can always stick this back onto the little piece of plastic and save it to use on another project. All right, so now we have that part done, and we're ready to go ahead and move on to finishing up the brick wall and getting our Noof in. All right, so now what we want to do is we're going to gently peel this up. And I'm going to remove it from the stamping platform for just a moment. Because what I want to do at this point is just go ahead and put a little bit of color where we want our concrete look to be. So I'm going to take my piece of tape and I'm going to line it up against the very top of my wall, just to mask that off so that we don't get that color of the ink onto our top part there. And then I'm just going to grab a little scrap piece of paper here and just go ahead and place that down there. I can go ahead and just tape that down. And you can use a piece of scrap paper for the top piece if you want to, but since I already had the little piece of tape there, I just went ahead and used that. So I'm just going to mask out then below. And I'm going to grab my Lost Shadow. And let's see, my Lost Shadow brush. And I'm just going to take this and just lightly go over to kind of give that concrete look. So we've just kind of got a little concrete ledge that they put on the top of our brick wall. Again, I'm not terribly worried about getting it solid or all the same shade all the way across. Again, because the concrete doesn't necessarily have a solid one particular color all the way. It's just been out in nature, so it doesn't necessarily have an all even color. All right, very simple. Just a little bit of that Lost Shadow on there. All right, so now I'm going to take this piece and remove it. And then I want my wall to have just a slight little bit of definition. So I'm going to take my fine tip black pen, or you can use your black color pencil if you prefer to use that. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little definition up there to show where the top of the wall is. And I always kind of I don't even worry about it being solid all the way across there. Just enough to kind of give the indication so that we know where the edge of the brick wall is. So I'm just dashing it along there just a little bit. All right, I'll go ahead and remove my little piece of tape and define my lower edge as well. Again, I'm not necessarily doing just a solid line. I just want to do something to make that slight little indication there. All right, so now we will grab our stamping platform one more time. Place our card back down. And we're going to grab Noof. And with Noof, what we're wanting, and you can see how well loved my Noof is. I actually need to go ahead and order a second one that's a little bit clearer so I can see him a little bit better. But what we want to do is just have it where his eyes are just peeking above the wall. So let's see if I can kind of see that, where I want that to be, with him just peeking over the wall. Now I want to make sure that I don't get any ink down on my wall while I'm stamping him. So again, I'm just going to mask out this top part. Maybe even go ahead and just lay a little bit more scrap paper down just to make sure. And then I'm going to ink up just enough over his face. You don't have to ink up the entire stamp. And press down really well. Okay, let's see if we got a good impression on that. Looks like we got a pretty good impression there. All right. And then we can pull our little mask off. Now, sometimes if you don't get your little mask just exactly where you want it, or the stamp doesn't completely stamp right, you can just go in with just a few little kind of brush marks with your pen and fill in if you feel like you have any missing spaces there. Maybe if you want to define the top of your wall a little bit more, right where Noof is. Just kind of go in and clean that up just a little bit. All right, so let's remove it from our stamping platform. Put that away for the moment. All right, so before we go on to doing the coloring on our rest of our thing here, I'm going to go ahead and just draw my little Easter egg. I'm not the best at the oval shapes when I'm drawing, but I just want to put an Easter egg right down here, hidden in the grasses. Put a few little stripes on there that will color in shortly. Get that drawn in first. All right, so now we need to get a little bit of sky going in the background. So let's take our broken china and get started on just filling in a little bit of the coloring on the sky. So we'll take our broken china. Let's see. Actually, I think I'll use this brush. It's already got the right color on it. And we're just going to, and if you want to, like we did before, just go ahead and mask off the wall so that we don't get any of the ink, the wrong ink color on the wall, on the top of the wall part. And we'll just go in and blend this over the sky area, being sure to avoid getting on top of Noof. And again, because it is the sky, having dark and light shades of the broken china is just fine. That gives it a little bit of the effect of maybe some clouds in the lighter spots, or the variation that you usually see in the sky sometimes. All right, so just a very quick little dash there of the blue. Now we can go ahead and remove that mask. And we may have gotten just a tiny little bit under there, but that's okay, because that actually, we were going to go back in and add a few little shadows. So that's going to just help us with that effect. So we're not going to worry if it does get a little bit of ink under our masking there. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do a little bit of color on Noof. So I want to do him kind of more of a grayish shade, but I want it to be dark. So I'm going to use my black soot. And what I'm going to do, let's see, I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of my black soot down onto my table work surface. I'm going to spritz a little bit of water down there, and then I'm going to take my paintbrush, pick up some of that water and some of the ink, and just go in and fill in around Noof. And like I said, I only want it to be a light, almost grayish color, and darker where obviously where all the dark areas are from our stamp. This is just a really easy way, by using the ink almost as a paint. So there we go. That just gives him a little bit of color there. All right, and then we will move on to our rabbit. And with our rabbit, we're going to use, let me wipe off the color that's on my brush. We're going to start out with the Vintage Photo. That's going to be our little base color. Again, spritz water down where we have dabbed in some of the Vintage Photo, and then just do a light base coat on Lupin. Don't get inside of the ear right here, because the inside is where we're going to go ahead and color a little bit of pink in there. You do want to get on the top outside part of his ear. And then, of course, on his face. Okay, so basically you've just got a nice little light base color down. Now we're going to do our Walnut stain, and this is just going to be in these little darker areas you see on the stamp that indicate some darker shadows. So we're going to do the same thing, but we're just going to use this Walnut stain just kind of in those darker areas, just to give him just a little bit of dimension. Maybe just a little bit along the ears to kind of indicate a little bit of shadowing as well. Giving it just a little bit more depth. Right around the face area too, where it's darker. Under his chin. And a little bit down this ear here. And over on our other ear, because it's kind of back in the shadows behind. Alright, so that just kind of gives him a little bit of shape. Alright, so now we can go ahead and take our art markers and go ahead and put a little bit of color in some of the places. I'm going to take a kind of a light green color and color in Noof's eye, his eyes. You can use any color you like, but I do like the green. And then I'm going to do the same on my rabbit. Just a little bit of the green there. Then I've got a pink. That I'm going to do in the ears. Both on Lupin and on Noof. And then of course I've got to have the pink nose on the rabbit. right, so now what we want to do is we want to put a little bit of shadowing on there. So you can kind of see from our example, I put a little bit of shadowing around Noof and around my rabbit. Again, this just gives them some depth. So what I'm going to do is take the black soot, just take in a little bit of dauber here and just kind of lightly brush some of that right under Noof's face there on the brick wall, so you can kind of see that there's a little bit of shadow there. And then we're going to do some right here around the rabbit. We just kind of do it around that front edge there so that it looks like we've got some nice shadowing. And then of course we need to put some shadowing down here between the legs. And then we will put a little bit just underneath. And that gives us that more dimensional look that we'd like to have. All right, and so for the couple of last few items we need to do, we're going to go ahead and start out by coloring our Easter egg. Now this one I did blue and green, and it's a little bit, doesn't show up so much. So I'm going to grab the blue on our project we're working on now, and color in a few of the stripes with that blue. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab the pink. See, let's go ahead and do that little end piece. Then I'm going to go ahead and grab the pink so we can definitely see our two different colors of stripes there. And because our egg is kind of sitting there on the ground too, we'll just put just a tiny little bit. You're not going to be able to see it very well, but a little bit of shadow under our egg. All right, and so for our final thing that we want to do is we're going to take the chipped sapphire. What I like to do is I like to put a little kind of distressed edge, I guess you might call it, around. It's like a little frame around my entire card. What this does is it adds a little bit of interest, and then the frame helps to draw the eye towards the center of the card, and keeps the focus on the main part of the card that we're doing. I hope that makes sense to you. To me, it's just an element that's used to give a nice finishing touch. So I'm just going to kind of go, and I'm just kind of taking a little bit of colors and doing them in just a little circular motion, just to get a little bit of that frame around the edge. Let's go ahead and put some down here at the bottom. All right, and then that just gives us that nice look. So now we are ready to go ahead and finish our card up. We'll take a little, I'll wipe this up just a little bit so none of the ink that we might have gotten on our work surface will get in places we don't want it. And then we will take our piece of cardstock for the frame and our card base. And let's see what I did with my little piece of cardstock for the frame. I had it right here. Oh, there it is. All right, so we'll take this piece and we're going to just center that on top. And I'm going to use my tape, my runner tape. And we will put that on top, centered in our little frame there. And once we've got that in, then we can do the same thing all over again to center it into our piece of card base. All right, and now we've got that on our card, and there is our finished product. Thank you so much for watching my video tutorial today. I hope you will give this card a try. It's kind of a fun little Easter card. Be sure and check out more tutorials on the delbellows.designs.com website under the tab for the design team members. Also, check out the website. We're having a great big sale right now, and the prices are really great. You'll find some great bargains. I hope you have a great day.